Good evening, I'm Diana Sky and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. A large-scale Russian provocation against Poland. Warsaw says 19 Russian drones violated its airspace on Wednesday and that those posing a threat were shot down with help from NATO aircraft. Now, the incident marks the first time the Western alliance has opened fire during Russia's war in Ukraine. On this episode, we'll bring you the details of this breach, Warsaw's official response, and what it could mean for regional security.
This situation brings us the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II.
Poland reacts to Russia's violation of its airspace.
Europe stands in full solidarity with Poland.
And Warsaw receives air defense support offers as it consults allies after invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty. And Donald Trump urges Europe to impose tariffs on China and India to pressure Putin. And we begin with the Kremlin's latest provocation in the region. 19 Russian drones violated Polish airspace in the late hours of Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning. Poland and NATO allies scrambled fighter jets, intercepting at least 3 drones that appeared to have veered across the border from Belarus during an attack on Ukraine. Now, debris from the aircraft was later found scattered across rural areas in Poland's east. We now move to the village of veered near the Ukrainian border, where we're joined by our correspondent Kazimierz Wysiak. Kazimierz, good evening. Now, you're located some 15 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. I mean, what's the situation there on the ground? To what extent do Polish residents there feel concerned? And can you just sum up a little bit of what we know so far?
Good evening, Diana. First of all, let's just say that the situation is under control. Poland definitely is not at the state of war with Russia, despite the Polish military in the early hours of morning calling this situation an act of aggression. But now the situation is definitely more clear, more under control. We all woke up today to the news of more than a dozen Russian drones flying into Polish airspace and some of them being shot down by NATO aircraft. A first time something like that has happened. Now, a lot of these drones just simply smashed into the ground in various fields in the east of Poland, but at least 3 or 4, according to the Polish government, have been shot down by NATO aircraft, including by some Dutch pilots. This was as much a Polish operation as it was a NATO operation, with various countries being involved in what was happening. Now, we are currently, as you've mentioned, at the village of veered, about 15 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and the building you can see behind me faintly over there, the white building, the rooftop of this building collapsed after some debris from a drone which was shot down, smashed through the rooftop. Fortunately, the couple who lives there was at the time on the ground floor, so they were not hurt miraculously. And actually no one was hurt, despite various drones falling in different places in the country. The Polish services have secured at least 12 drones or debris of drones in the country's east. At least 12,000 police officers took part in search of various drones and drone pieces. Now, the people here in these villages are rightly so terrified by what has happened. This image of this building behind me is perhaps the best representation of these fears of what could have happened. And I've actually traveled to different locations today to look at the places where the drones fell. So please take a look at my report from today. What you are looking at right now is one of the Russian drones which fell on the Polish territory on the night from Tuesday to Wednesday. It is currently being secured, wrapped in some black plastic foil by the Polish uniformed services, probably to be taken away for further inspection. This whole area has been secured by the Polish uniformed services. It is one of the 7 drones that the Polish services have located and secured in the past several hours. But as we know, at least 19 drones or other flying objects have crossed into Poland during the night. Now, this drone, we don't know if it was shot down or if it just dropped on its own. It is being secured right now by the Polish services, who have cordoned off, blocked off this entire area. We are standing right now at a land of one of the Polish farmers here, about 50 kilometers from the border with Ukraine, in a small village of Wochyń. And for the Polish residents of these villages, this site, a Russian drone on their land, is definitely a cause for concern.
I'm deeply shocked because it fell near the buildings just 200 meters away, and who knows what would have happened to everything my family and I have worked for all our lives. It was a terrifying experience for me. It feels as if the war started for me today, even though it's supposedly not here yet.
And now we are in another village, the village of Veered, about 15 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. And the skeleton of the rooftop you've just seen is perhaps the most striking image we've seen in the past 24 hours. This is the place where the debris from one of the drones, which was actually shot down by NATO aircraft, smashed through the ceiling of this residential building. Luckily, no one was hurt, but this place, this rooftop, is a warning to NATO that Russia is still a threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to all of Europe. From Veered, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
And in response to that threat, Poland has invoked Article 4 of the NATO Charter, a rare move called when a member state feels threatened. Now, it's only been used 7 times since the alliance was created. These consultations, though, don't automatically lead to military action. Our defense correspondent Zuzana Jurek reports on the seriousness of the threat on Poland's doorstep.
This situation brings us the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II. We have a full-scale war beyond our eastern border, but we have already witnessed something that goes beyond the bounds of mere provocations in our own skies. Poland today has a political enemy on its doorstep who does not conceal his hostile intentions.
Poland and its allies responded rapidly.
Allied mechanisms have been activated. Polish, Dutch, Italian and German aircraft participated in the operation. We are dealing with an unprecedented attack by Russia, not just on Polish territory, but on NATO territory as well. In response, Poland has asked the Transatlantic Alliance to invoke Article 4 of the treaty. At noon, I summoned the Russian Shah d'Affaires, who was given a protest note.
Article 4 of the NATO Charter has only been invoked 7 times since the alliance's creation.
Article 4 is the article where NATO conducts consultations when one of the member states feels particularly endangered. Its safety, its security is particularly endangered. Of course, these are only consultations, but I think it's important to say that this is the first time since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine that this article has been invoked.
NATO Secretary General denounced Moscow's actions, while emphasizing the mutual commitments that serve as the foundation of the alliance's treaty.
Allies expressed solidarity with Poland and denounced Russia's reckless behavior. A full assessment of the incident is ongoing. What is clear is that the violation last night is not an isolated incident.
And as experts point out,
the Russians are very good at this kind of initiating situations that might fall underneath the threshold of an overt invasion, which is what Article 5 is in effect intended to respond to. So this will be an ongoing challenge for NATO.
And it's not just violations of Poland's airspace. As the country's digital minister highlighted, Russia's cyber warfare against Poland has intensified in parallel.
Even before the last drones entered Polish airspace and were shot down, the amount of disinformation online spiked and continues to intensify. The volume of disinformation narratives is constantly growing. Russia and Belarus are behind this organized disinformation campaign, both in Poland and abroad.
Though the scale of the incursion is unprecedented, Russia's attempts to escalate did not take Warsaw by surprise. Just a day before the provocation, the Polish defense minister warned that any drones originating in the east would be intercepted by the Polish armed forces. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
And happening now, U.S. President Donald Trump and Polish President Karol Nawrocki are holding a telephone conversation. The head of Nawrocki's office has confirmed this. And President Trump earlier responded to those Russian drones entering Polish airspace with a cryptic message on social media. I quote, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." Now moving on, Warsaw has received offers of concrete support for its air defense, the Polish Prime Minister wrote on social media after consulting European allies. And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that Europe will defend every inch of its territory, including its eastern flank, Poland. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins shared the details from Strasbourg in this next report.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has been busy speaking to his European allies, aiming to shore up support against this recent incursion that occurred over Poland's skies. We know that he spoke to leaders from France, Ukraine, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and more, as well as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
In my conversations today with Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, Volodymyr Zelensky, Giorgia Meloni, Friedrich Merz, Dick Schoof and Mark Rutte, I heard more than just words of solidarity with Poland. I received offers of tangible support for our country's air defense systems.
The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen used her State of the European Union address in Strasbourg on Wednesday to highlight the seriousness of this attack. She reiterated that a dent in Europe's armour, particularly along that eastern flank, is a danger for all.
And just today we have seen a reckless and unprecedented violation of Poland and Europe's airspace by more than 10 Russian Shahid drones. Europe stands in full solidarity with Poland.
TVP World interviews MEPs about what reaction they expect the EU as well as Poland to take to react to this latest event.
This is the clearest signal that we have to build up our defense and our deterrence, because this is one of the many tests that Putin is trying to do with us, and we have to respond in a very calm but also decisive manner.
With this kind of a development towards Poland, we had those instances in Lithuania as well. So we have to move forward as quickly as possible. It's not a joke, it's a grim reality we have to face with.
The military planners need to look at the capabilities at hand, how to detect these kind of drones and how to take them down. I mean, that's an easy military solution. The question is whether we have the means available. Poland showed that in Poland these means are available.
And what is clear outside of the corridors of power in Strasbourg, as well as those important decision-making rooms in the capital, is that what is happening in Poland's airspace should not be a concern solely for those citizens in Poland, but a worry for all across the European Union. Angela Skujins from Strasbourg for TVP World.
And now let's go live to our Ukraine correspondent Oz Katerji in Kyiv for reactions coming out of Ukraine. Oz, hi. So Zelensky wrote, quote, "It wasn't just one Shahid that could be called an accident, but at least 8 strike drones aimed towards Poland." But I mean, Oz, Ukraine got hit hard last night towards this morning. I mean, 15 Ukrainian regions were targeted. Please walk us through that.
So, yeah, Zelensky's released several statements tonight. We should go into them briefly. But speaking about the attack on Ukraine, the Ukrainian government says Russia launched 415 drones and 42 missiles onto Ukrainian territory, targeting large parts of the country, largely the west and central parts of the country, including Vinnytsia, Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv, which borders Poland, and Zhytomyr, where one person was killed. So it's important to remember that while much of the eyes are looking at NATO members at the moment, that the Ukrainians are the ones feeling this the most. And President Zelensky used one of his statements tonight, his nightly address, to complain that world leaders had not reacted strong enough yet to Moscow's behavior. The question is, what does Kyiv want? And this is something they've asked for before, but they are really using this to try and build momentum for what Zelensky's calling a joint air defense plan with Europe. Let's take a listen to part of one of Zelensky's statements following speaking with European leaders today.
There are several reasons for this brazen behavior of Russia, and they are absolutely obvious to everyone. We need to work on a joint air defense system and create an effective air shield over Europe. Ukraine has long proposed this, and we have concrete solutions. We must respond together to all current challenges and be ready for potential threats to all Europeans in the future. Likewise, we need to significantly increase joint funding for the production of interceptor drones. They have already proven their effectiveness.
Now, these words from President Zelensky match the words released by Andrei Sybiha, the country's Minister for Foreign Affairs, earlier on Wednesday. Let's take a listen to those.
Russian drones flying into Poland during the massive attack on Ukraine show that Putin's sense of impunity keeps growing because he was not properly punished for his previous crimes. This situation shows that finally the decision needs to be taken to enable partner air defence capabilities in neighbouring countries to be used to intercept drones and missiles in the Ukrainian airspace, including those approaching NATO borders. Ukraine has suggested such a step for a long time. It needs to be taken for the sake of collective security. Furthermore, sanctions must be ramped up without delay. Putin will only get serious about peace negotiations when he faces serious transatlantic pressure. The Russian war machine must be stopped, and it can only be stopped by strength, not weakness.
So the Ukrainians are very clear here about what they want from European partners and the United States going forward. But the question will be whether their argument that now they want to defend not just their own skies, but also European skies, will find willing recipients in European capitals. Back to you, Diana.
And unfortunately, this conflict seems to be escalating instead of ending. Thank you so much, Oz Chatterjee, coming to us live from Kyiv. Now, Poland is also on high alert as Russia prepares joint drills with Belarus near its border. Only a day after announcing the closure of key crossings, Warsaw faced its first drone incursion from Belarusian territory, raising fresh fears over the strategically crucial Suwałki Gap. It's a narrow strip of land linking Poland and Lithuania and a potential vulnerability for NATO. Anastasia Yanchenko has the story.
Just a day after Poland announced the closure of 3 remaining border crossings with Belarus, Russia launched its drone provocation, reportedly with help from Minsk.
For the first time, many of these drones flew in directly from Belarus.
This major escalation comes just 2 days ahead of large joint military drills between Russia and Belarus, called Zapad, which is Russian for West, scheduled to begin this Friday.
These military exercises are directed against the West, judging by the name, primarily against NATO. Different numbers of forces and resources are involved, and it was under the cover of those same exercises that Moscow prepared its invasion in Ukraine in 2022.
Warsaw is aware of the threat posed by the Zapad exercises. As of this year, they will take place much closer to Poland's and Lithuania's borders, near the Suwałki Gap, a thin strip of land linking the two countries, wedged between Belarus and Russia's Kaliningrad exclave.
It's a huge area of vulnerability, not just for Poland, but for the Baltics. It would cut off the Baltic states from the rest of NATO.
The Suwałki Gap is considered the most likely point of attack in any Russian move against the alliance, as its capture would cut off the Baltic states from Poland and other NATO allies.
Belarus and Russia are carrying out tactical nuclear weapon drills, and they want to demonstrate their new military equipment. And that is both a strategic communication threat towards the Western audience. Every time the Russians do something like this, they monitor the response of the individual nation, they monitor the response of NATO allies.
Following Wednesday's drone provocation and in light of the upcoming Zapad drills, Poland's Interior Ministry has announced that all border crossings with Belarus will remain closed until further notice.
President Trump has urged Europe to impose 100% tariffs on China and India, the two biggest customers of Russian oil, in an effort to pressure Putin to end his war on Ukraine. But will such a massive tariff do more harm than good? And will EU officials even consider it? Maciej Wilowski reports.
Thank you very much, everybody.
U.S. President Donald Trump is stepping up his efforts to end the war in Ukraine. In a meeting with senior U.S. and EU officials in Washington, Trump urged Europe to impose tariffs of 100% on China and India, two of the biggest customers of Russian oil, designed to pressure Russia to end its war in Ukraine. Washington said it was ready to mirror or match the tariffs imposed by Europe on either country. Despite the tariff pitch, Trump posted on social media that he looks forward to working with India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, on a trade deal.
I am pleased to announce that India and the United States of America are continuing negotiations to address the trade barriers between our two nations.
India, traditionally an American ally, has been strengthening its ties with Russia and China. Trump, in August, slapped a 50% tariff on India for importing Russian crude oil. His latest proposal, however, could backfire against Europe and the West, and EU officials may be unwilling to pursue it.
There is also a major risk that if Europe imposes that kind of tariffs on China and India, it will not achieve its objectives, but it can destroy relations with those two major powers, can alienate another big players, can consolidate anti-Western bloc, and without achieving our own goals.
China and India are unlikely to bow to coercive pressure.
I believe more dialogue and more engagement is a much better way than unilateral coercive measure that can only backfire against our geopolitical and economic interests. We need to talk with Donald Trump, with America, about what sources can be reopened for Russia, for India and China. We can talk about Iran. We can talk with Saudi Arabia and Gulf states.
There is also the likelihood of internal opposition from within the EU. Hungary and Slovakia are two EU member states opposed to banning Russian crude, and both are open to pursuing closer relations with China. Rather than breaking Russia's ability to wage war, such a massive tariff could only strengthen the resolve of the anti-Western alliance. For TVP World, I'm Maciej Wilowski.
We're discussing the latest Russian drones breaching Polish airspace overnight during a coordinated assault on Ukraine. Now, NATO aircraft helped intercept them, leading Warsaw to invoke Article 4 of NATO's charter and call urgent consultations with its allies. Joining me now to break down the details of this breach, the international response they're triggering from Warsaw's allies, and what it could mean for regional security, I'm joined by Mark Toth, the U.S. National Security and Foreign Policy Analyst. Mark, thanks so much for being with us here at such a crucial day. Mark, let me get straight into it. President Trump and President Nawrocki have just recently ended a phone call, and I just want to quote to you what President Nawrocki posted on his social media X. He said, "I just spoke by phone with U.S. President Donald Trump about the multiple violations of Polish airspace by Russian drones that occurred tonight. The conversation is part of a series of consultations I've been conducting with our allies. Today's talks reaffirmed our unity." Please, your comments on what Nawrocki wrote.
Diana, thank you for having me on. Yeah, basically, I think all of us realize that this was a message from Putin in many ways directly to Donald Trump. Just last week, your president was sitting in the White House with Donald Trump saying, look, if Poland wants more troops to be stationed throughout your country, we're willing to do that. And I think that was messaging to Putin, and Putin got that message. And so in part, although there are a lot more angles to this than just this one, but in part, Putin's messaging last night was, look, I saw you in the White House. I saw what you're trying to do with Donald Trump, and this is my objection to it. Now, Poland to date, and which is great, has basically said, we're not going to be intimidated by this. It's just going to make us reaffirm our commitment to both support Ukraine, but also to push back against Russian aggression anywhere in Eastern Europe, including the Baltic states and Poland.
Mark, I mean, this escalation also, I mean, aside from Putin, you're saying, sending a message, right, to Donald Trump and the United States. However, this does come just 2 days before large military drills, right, between Russia and Belarus. And of course, of Poland saying that they're going to close the border with Belarus ahead of those Zapad military drills. Do you think that that may have prompted this provocation, or do you not see it that way?
Right. No, it has in part. There are a lot of moving parts here, Diana, in terms of what's fueling this and why it happened last night. Part of it was, as I wrote with my colleague, Colonel John Sweet, in The Hill today in Washington, D.C., was, look, Putin was emboldened by his meetings in Shanghai when he was there to meet with President Xi and Kim Jong-un. And that's partly why. I think it gave him the leeway, the leash, if you will, from Beijing to go ahead and do this. The other part of it, which was what we just talked about, was pushing back against your president's visit to the White House. And another component of it right now is these upcoming Zapad military exercises that are scheduled to occur in Belarus. And it's notable, as your Prime Minister Donald Tusk pointed out, that for the first time these drones came through Belarusian airspace in terms of reaching into Poland. And that's significant too, because I think what Putin is trying to accomplish there is messaging on a global scale, but there's also a training component to this. If they can incorporate lessons learned, this was what you would call, in classical military terms, a probing operation. It basically triggered NATO's response. They wanted to measure that, track it, learn from it, and then obviously incorporate that into the training that is going to be happening between September 12th and 16th in Belarus as part of these Zapad exercises.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you're talking, of course, about the NATO Article 4 that was triggered. How prepared do you think Poland was to handle a scenario like this? I mean, let me play devil's advocate here, and let's say it's 1,000 drones that were launched and not a couple of dozen or 19, right? Where does Poland stand in terms of readiness?
Right. It's a hard question to answer right now. I think you always want to be more ready than you are and never get comfortable with where you're at. At this point, we just don't have enough data to know what the success rate was. We know that 3 to 4 were basically interdicted, shot down. It appears that a Dutch F-35 shot down a couple of those. But what we don't know is if the calculus was made yet that, look, certain drones were just going to fall in areas that they weren't going to cause any harm, and therefore it wasn't worth the expense of expending a missile, keep that in reserve in case there is a wider, broader Russian attack in the future, rather than just simply blowing up a drone to blow it up. So right now the jury is still out. But I think what it should be, the takeaway, in my opinion, to your devil's advocate question is, what if it's 1,000 drones in the future? And in my opinion, Poland is probably not yet ready for that. It needs to be. I think this is something that they need to be looking at on the scale that what Israel's had to face in terms of Iran attacking it with ballistic missiles and drones, and taking this as a warning sign. And I don't mean that critically of Poland. Poland's done a ton in terms of getting ready, but I think now this is just a clarion call to do more and to do it quickly.
How would you say that the government has adapted its defense measures also in this case?
Right. I think good. Look, I think you've got to get a lot of credit to your foreign minister, Zikorsky. I mean, he made it clear when they were closing the border with Belarus several days ago that Poland needed to be taking the threats emanating from Moscow seriously. And sure enough, just 2 days later, that's happening. So his decision was wise. And I think if you talk to any U.S. Army commander that's been in charge ultimately, if Russia were to invade Poland and the rest of Western Europe, the thing they worry most about is what you were just reporting on in the top of your newscast, which is the Suwalki Gap, that narrow strip that divides Poland from the Baltic states. So far, in terms of closing that border, I think they've done well. And your Eastern Shield that you're developing, all of these things have been good. Your investments in technology and in terms of doing that. But now I think it's got to be more. It's got to be that this kinetic threat is around the corner. And do you have adequate military resources, of adequate military training to deter something? I think you do. I think you've got a good start of it.
Right, and speaking of that, I do want to ask you, how do you think that the international reactions and response has been to this in terms of supporting Poland and helping Poland?
You know, from a European perspective, so far so good. I mean, we're hearing the right things. But we're still talking about this in terms of being a provocation. I view it as an intentional attack. And from the U.S. perspective, I don't think we've heard enough yet from Donald Trump. Basically, he said, oh, look, Poland's being attacked. Here we go. But here we go is not a red line. Here we go is not a firm statement to Putin that, look, now you've crossed this line and there's going to be game changers. I think for Poland to ultimately protect yourselves, you're going to have to start interdicting these missiles in Ukrainian airspace, not waiting for them to reach your territory. And that's going to cause a big change. And I think that's what you need to be seeing out of here at most, is recognizing that there has to be some kind of Western air shield covering Ukraine so that it also covers you.
Mark, do you think that, though, Donald Trump has been a little bit unpredictable with the way he's reacted to Putin and, and on the war in Ukraine? Do you think that this might, quote unquote, wake him up and kind of trigger a further response?
I hope it does. It needs to, because, look, it's clear that Putin is taunting him. Alaska meant nothing to Putin other than a green light to continue attacking Ukrainian civilians and doing more.
And a red carpet welcome, right?
Right, and a red carpet welcome. And just another red carpet welcome, as you point out, Diana, in Shanghai, too. And it's just emboldening him. He's basically saying, I can push the envelope more, and he's doing so. And if we don't do it, he's going to keep doing it. So I think there has to be a strong, robust response. NATO cannot just respond with words to say, look, it's all good to say you're going to defend every square inch of NATO, but you've got to start pushing back in a way that actually punches Putin in the mouth, and you can do that over the skies of Ukraine.
Mark, and really just under 1 minute, and when do you think NATO will respond? What kind of response can we expect?
I hope it's quickly. The Article 4 invocation was an important first step. And I think Poland has got to take the lead now in saying, look, this is what we need. This is what we demand. We're on the front lines here. And so it has to happen immediately. The sense of urgency is now, not a week from now, not a month from now, not a year from now.
Thank you so much, Mark Toth, the U.S. National Security and Foreign Policy Analyst. This is definitely a developing story. And thank you so much for your input here with us on TVP World this evening.
Thank you, Diana, and my thoughts to the people of Poland. Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. My name is Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, but don't go away, as we will keep you updated around the clock on the latest unfolding developments on our borders. Stay tuned.